is Konganaya outside of Demico, the western pavement of Demico, and they are of course performing some cultural tunes Saturday morning.
constitution. I believe in constitution.
Old dog now bite me. Old dog now bite me. Mr. Brutus, hold your dog. Mr. Humpy, hold your dog. Dog now bite me. Mr. Hoppy, hold your dogs. Old dog now bite me. Good morning, neighbor. Good morning, friend. Morning, are you morning? Welcome to another program of BUXTONIAN Morning Time. Let me take the time to say good morning to Assistant Commissioners of Dead. Morning, neighbor, morning. Are you welcome to another program of BUXTONIAN Morning Time? Let me take a moment to say good morning to Assistant Commissioners of Police, Ravindra Dat Budram, Errol Watts, Wendell Blanham, Edmund Cooper, Philip Azur, Curly Simon, Assistant Commissioners of Police, recently promoted by the Police Service Commission. Good morning to you, gentlemen, and to Senior Superintendents, Khalid Manzal, Dion Moore, Jairam Ramlakan, Ramesh Ashram, Carol Harding, Hugh Winter, Dennis Stephen, and Walter Stanton. Congratulations to Senior Superintendent. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And to the Superintendents of Police, newly minted, congratulations on your promotion and good morning. Dear Ruplal, Jevon Hamer, Anthony Austin, Amit Das, Sherwin Hilken, Timothy Williams, Mahadio Singh, Shabinath Singh, Myrna Richards, Sonia Herbert, Raquel Delph, Colin Sullivan, Donna Ferguson, Ian Alonzo, and Shalon Daniels. Congratulations and good morning to you, Superintendents of Police. To the Deputy Superintendents of Police, Brian Lowenfield, Rohit Kishun, Danishwar Mahendranath, Jeanette Prince, Kevin Das, Rafael Ali, Troy Whittaker, Oswald Pitt. Good morning to you and have a pleasant rest of the day, Deputy Superintendents of Police. And to those Assistant Superintendents of Police, Roll Ned, Delon Fraser, Ray Mercurius, Waylon Wallace, Ike Grandison, Stephen Harris, Nicola Nurse, Charles Hook, Burton Carmichael, Glenn Campbell, Colette Evans, Keith Beaton, Marcia Seeley, Raquel Dotson, Lauren Blair McGregor, Trevor Ben, Kevin Archer. Congratulations and good morning to you. Welcome to another program of BUXTONIAN Morning Time. Assistant Superintendents of Police on probation. Good morning to you. Damian McLennan, Shikanda Cyril, Travis Cush, Dominic Bess, Jared Colen, Osina Alin. Congratulations. And to those inspectors of police, the chief inspectors of police, Mohan Khan, Purushottam Prasad, Corinne Pitt, Chevron Muryugaya, Richard Ramatar, Mohit Ramratan, Karen Thornhill, Laverne Garaway. Congratulations and good morning to you. Inspectors of Police, good morning to you. David Braffett, Radish Prasad, Paul Wins, Rolando Sandy, Sister Ryan, Tyson Hines, Krishnadat Singh, Trisha McDonald's, Beckles, Lloyd Thomas, Luxlury Dodson, Nikolai Noel, Corina Campbell, Sean Maxwell, Marks Wilson, Trenton Payne, Julio Huno Jonas, Michael Ramdas, Sherwin Joseph, Natoya Benjamin, Sherwin Dodson, Stephen Gobin, Keith Conway, Dwayne Caleb, David McPherson, Kumar Ganesh, Nafaste Morris, Judy Sandiford, Laverne Jack, Shondell Tucker, Faith Ross Hines, Christy Lawrence, Rhonda Liverpool, Kirk Crawford, Sion Mingo, Ramcharan Bowan, Krishna Sitaram, Michael Clark, Hazrat Mohammed, Richard Correa, Leon George, Carlos Ross, Hamlet De Silva, Simone Isaacs, Ruby King Blair, Natasha Thomas Wilson, Armanath Rabindranath, Vikram Loknath, Carl Saul, Mark George, Gavindra Jagnarain, Ramesh Chattergoon, Richard Harris, Rodwell Downer, Rupnarain Ramnarain, David Hunt, Federica Roach, Yvonne Headley. Good morning to you, Inspectors of Police. Good morning to you, Special Constables, Inspectors, Dennis Critchlow Smith, Karen Court, Philip Sylvain, Ramona Collins, Cosetta Nurse Shazam, Beverly Smith, Marjorie Fraser. Congratulations and good morning to all of you newly promoted ranks of the Guyana Police Force. Morning and welcome to another program of BUXTONIAN Morning Time in this dear country of ours, Guyana, where the Police Service Commission has promoted dozens. But the acting commissioner of police is hopping around the promotions. Hoppy is hopping around the promotions because Deadfall says the government will not respect that list. And so we're going to be talking about that love letter sent to Hoppy by current chairman of the Police Service Commission. As they say, the man with the board cage. Assistant Commissioner of Police, retired, Paul Slow. We're going to talk about that. But let's do our normal thing. Morning, neighbor. I wonder where ratings and all of them there. They like to talk police business. Y'all come to the back fence. I'm ready. I got the details. I got the files.
Morning, neighbor, wake and I been morning. When you had your pocket full, you know me tell me morning. No, because your money done your hustle, but tell me morning. Morning, never morning. Morning, never morning. Morning, never morning. No one joke when I been morning. Morning, never morning. Morning, never morning. Morning, never morning. You go keep your gun, I been morning. Morning, never. Morning, never. Morning, never. I want your gun, I been morning. Morning, never morning. Morning, never morning. Morning, never morning. You go keep your gun, I been morning. I don't want your gun, I been morning. You go keep your gun, I been morning.
You could keep your conniving morning. And some people ordinarily would have said to the government and the commissioner of police, you could suck it up and keep your promotions, keep your badges of ranks and other paraphernalia. But no, 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 no. No, 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 not at all. Once they deserve it, they have to get it. And so, the lawyers, the lawyer, as a matter of fact, lawyer Selwyn Peters has written to the Guyana Police Force. But we're going to talk about that. The doctor's in the house. Morning, Dr. Hinds. Morning, neighbor. Morning, Dr. Hinds.
Morning.
Why, like you dropped asleep on your seat, like you're doing like Anil?
I had muted myself. Good morning to you and good morning to your viewers across the world and in Guyana.
Morning and welcome to another program of Buxtonian Morning Time. It is Tuesday, the 6th day of July. All month I celebrate my birthday here. Good. I send my birthday greetings and gifts. Yes. Let's talk about what's been happening on the local, regional, and international scene. Yesterday was CARICOM Day, the holiday at least. Sunday was the 4th of July. CARICOM or CARIGON? Especially looking at the recent treatment of the Haitians.
No, I mean, I don't think that is an indictment of CARICOM. It's an indictment of the Guyana's government. And I never tire of saying on this program that the PPP has never been a pro-CARICOM party. They've always looked at regional integration in ethnic terms, because for them, it's about ethnicity and numbers. The 58 to 62 Federation, which was our first plunge in the direction of regional integration, Guyana was kept out because the PPP government of the day under Dr. Jagan argued that should the PPP take Guyana into the Federation, Indians would become a minority in a larger Caribbean country, a larger Caribbean political formation. And so they kept Guyana out of the Federation. This prompted a second split in the PPP, because as we remember, there was the first split in 1955 when the Burnham faction left the PPP to form the Burnhamite PPP. But after Dr. Jagan's refusal to take Guyana into the Federation, there was a second split in which Sidney King, now UC Guyana, Martin Carter's brother, Keith Carter, Rory Westmus, among others, left the party on the question of the Federation. So the PPP had that start in which they frowned on Federation. And you remember, Guyana never went into the University of the West Indies system. They formed the University of Guyana, as opposed to joining the University of the West Indies under the PPP Jagan. During the rule of the PNC from 64 to 92, the PPP always saw CARICOM as a racial outfit. They argued very strongly that the CARICOM leaders did not take a strong stand on the excesses of the Burnham government, because the Burnham government was black and they were protecting black solidarity. So they saw CARICOM as a racist organization from 64 to 92. After 92, they sought to create a parallel regional organization, including Guyana, Suriname, and Trinidad and Tobago. Because in 1995, the United National Congress, led by Basdio Pandey, came to power in Trinidad and Tobago. It was the first time that a pro-Indian party had taken power in that country. And there was also an Indian-led government in Suriname. So the PPP sought, along with Pandey and the Indian government in Suriname, to form a parallel regional organization. They never saw CARICOM in positive light. Never. And so CARICOM, for their own reasons, their own ideological and geopolitical reasons, supported the installation of the PPP to government in the 2020 elections. That was quite surprising, because CARICOM has always, had always up to then taken a neutral position on Guyana. But like I said, for geopolitical reasons, for political, selfish political reasons, as hinted by Winston Jordan on this program a couple of months ago, they decided to support the installation of the PPP into power in 2020. And even then, even though they did that, the PPP, shortly after the election, began to show scant respect for CARICOM and scant respect for them. Evidence, look at the way they have treated with Haiti, as you pointed out. Look at the way they have treated with the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, refusing aid from Trinidad, insulting the Prime Minister, and so forth. The PPP has never been interested in the spirit of CARICOM, and they will never be. Although CARICOM was party to their installation in government. So that's a kind of brief history of the PPP's attitude to CARICOM. I think CARICOM is here to stay. Like any regional organization, it's very difficult to balance different sovereign countries. What integration asks for is the ceding of some political space to the common integration body. And when you have sovereign countries, they're always reluctant to cede that space so that you can have a common integration movement. And just look at the European Union, which is the oldest integration movement and the most advanced. You know, they have a common currency, they have a common court, they have a common government. And even in that integration movement, you have had turmoil. We saw Brexit, where the United Kingdom opted out of the Union. Inside of the EU Charter, there are provisions for members to opt out to certain things. So Britain, for example, never used the euro as their common their currency, even though they were part of the EU at the time. They still used the British pound because there's a provision for opting out. So integration movements are not easy. And sometimes we beat ourselves up in CARICOM because we have not moved as quickly as we should. And that's a legitimate concern, that sometimes we have not moved very quickly. But remember, we are bringing together 15 sovereign countries to operate as one entity. And that is always going to be a challenge. If we come to CARICOM, I spoke about the EU just now, we come to CARICOM, which came to power with the Treaty of Chaguaramas in 1973. Between the demise of the Federation in 62 and 73, there were several attempts to bring the thing back. because, you know, after Jamaica had a referendum and Jamaica opted to come out of the Federation, Dr. Eric Williams, the Prime Minister of Trinidad, famously said 1 from 10 leave not, meaning if Jamaica goes, there is no federation. The Mighty Sparrow sang perhaps one of his classic calypso called Federation, berating the Jamaicans for really dashing the dreams of Caribbean integration. Jamaica, of course, at that time was the most quote-unquote prosperous of the English-speaking Caribbean islands. A lot of people, especially the younger generation, wouldn't know that the Jamaican dollar, up until the early 1970s, was stronger than the US dollar. Was stronger than the US dollar. I think it was like 75 cents Jamaican money to a US dollar. So Jamaica at that time had been doing well through bauxite. They had a very high grade of calcite bauxite, and there was a demand for bauxite. They had also entered the world of tourism, which was a new product, and they got a lot of revenue from it. And they also were doing bananas. And those 3 crops, cocoa, which of course went into making coffee. So the Jamaican economy was relatively strong in formal terms. And so Jamaica felt that if they stayed in the integration movement, people from the smaller islands will flock to Jamaica, which was prosperous. This was the view of the Jamaica Labour Party, led by Alexander Bustamante at the time. The People's National Party, led by Norman Manley, favored integration. Our own Walter Rodney, as a student in Jamaica from 1960 to 1963, campaigned in favor of federation while he was there as a student. That was his start, the start to his political career. However, Jamaica left. I must say that despite the wealth in Jamaica, the wealth was concentrated in about 15 to 20 families. And it didn't trickle down to the masses of Jamaicans. Although you had that tremendous wealth, the illiteracy rate at that time in the English-speaking Caribbean was the lowest in Jamaica. It was about 50-something percent, while Jamaica and Guyana were in the high 90s. So it gives you a sense that economic wealth did not translate into social wealth for the masses of people. And it is that a development that led to the movement from ska to rocksteady, because as independence came to Jamaica in 1962, the ordinary Jamaicans realized that the expectation of independence did not materialize into wealth for them. Remember, they had invented ska in the 1950s, which was a very upbeat, fast music, a music of expectancy. And then as they realized it, they kind of slowed the music down to rocksteady, kind of wondering what is this independence. And by 1969, they're realizing that this independence is really an economic sham for the people. And they slowed the music down even further, and they moved the lyrics from boy meets girl to protest lyrics. That is how we come to know modern day reggae, and making a link there between music and economic and social development, or underdevelopment in Jamaica. So when Jamaica left, Eric Williams reasoned that the integration movement was dead, and so in effect it was dead. In between, we had the Little Eight, which later became the OECS. And the OECS really took the remnants of the Federation and formed the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. That is why the OECS today has its own currency, it has its own bank, it has its own court. In a sense, the OECS is far more advanced than CARICOM itself, because they took the machinery, the remnants of the Federation, and turn it into a viable integration system. Then at CARIFTA, the Caribbean Free Trade Area, thanks to the work of Burnham and Barrow, and Robert Bradshaw from St. Kitts Nevis. We almost, Barbados, Guyana, and St. Kitts almost formed their own federation because they were the movers behind CARIFTA. And then they managed to convince the others that a regional integration movement, viable one, was important. And in 1973, they signed the Treaty of Chaguaramas in Trinidad, forming CARICOM. Since then, CARICOM has gone through ups and downs. Immediately in 1973, they had to deal with the fact that England joined the European Union. And in fact, in effect, left the Caribbean on their own because we had some special arrangements with England. But now England went into the EU, and there's a wonderful calypso sung by the Lord Short from Antigua that captured what he called the unfaithfulness of England in going into the European Union and leaving the Caribbean islands on his own. And he said, you're so ungrateful. From Trinidad, you get all your citrus. From Guyana, you get all your bauxite and your sugar. And you're now gone and left us and gone in bed with the European Union. Well, very wonderful calypso in the days of real calypso and the jump on the wave story. And then you had the Grenada Revolution in 1979, which split the CARICOM countries. A lot of the islands were against the revolution. They became pro-American. And then you had one or two governments. You had the Manley government in Jamaica. You had the Burnham government in Guyana. And the Trinidad government, Williams died in 81, and George Chambers took over. Under Chambers, he took a more nationalist position vis-a-vis Grenada. So you had Trinidad, you had the Bahamas, you had Guyana, you had Jamaica on one side, and then you had all the other islands on the other side in relation to the Grenadian Revolution. So CARICOM was on a standstill between 1979 and 1984. I don't think they met during that period. I don't think they met. So there was a paralysis there. After the Grenadian Revolution, they began again to function. By the turn of the 1990s, the world had changed. The world had changed. The Cold War had come to an end. The Soviet Union was no longer there. And we entered into a unipolar world. It was a bipolar war when you had two superpowers. Now one superpower is gone. And we have a unipolar world with the United States as the only superpower. And the United States reintroduced global capitalism, what we in Guyana call, and Guyana, the Caribbean, call globalization or structural adjustment. Professor Neckerford said globalization is a new designation for an old obscenity, and that obscenity is slavery and colonialism. He said globalization is a new form of colonialism, but globalization or international global capitalism became the order of the day. And the CARICOM set up a committee led by Sir Sridhar Ramphal, in which they talked about renewing CARICOM. They went around the different countries in the Caribbean, talking to people about what they think CARICOM should be. And it was out of that exercise that came the suggestion for the Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ, and for the Caribbean Single Market and Economy. So there was now a pitch for closer economic relations, because from 73 up until the 90s, all we had was what was called functional integration, where we integrate on certain economic matters. But now we're talking about a close economic integration in which the Caribbean will become one economic space, will become one market where goods and capital can move freely among the states. That is what the Caribbean single market and economy is about. and then the Caribbean Court of Justice. Because if you're going to have a single economy, then you have to adjudicate conflicts in that single economy. So automatically there is need for a single court. And from the 1990s to now, that is what we've been pursuing. It was the single market and economy had its problems because some countries wanted to protect their own economy. So, for example, in a place like St. Vincent, they managed to get a clause in the agreement that when it comes to land, that the land priority for land would be given to Vincentians, so that an investor from Trinidad or Guyana could not go into St. Vincent and buy up all the land. That is possible in Guyana because Guyana doesn't have that kind of disclaimer. Somebody from Barbados could come into Guyana and buy up all the land, and we not that we're not going to be able to do anything, but that's part of the treaty. If people remember, it was the big conflict when you had, was it Antomakal came in to our market, and people began to argue that it's going to throw Banks Bear out of business, and for a moment it did. So you had this conflict here in Ghana between Banks Bear, the local bear, and Antomakal, Trinidad bear coming in because of the single market and economy.
As a matter of fact, I think there were efforts to take over Banks DH.
Yes. The same thing happened in Barbados, where Trinidad banks were going into Barbados, and the agents were crying out hard. Trinidad banks coming in, taking over. That is the reality of a single market and economy. You see why countries are reticent about going in to these regional arrangements. At the level of the court, although they agreed to the court, and although in theory all 15 Caribbean countries belong to the CCJ, they belong to the CCJ in its original jurisdiction. A lot of people think that it's only Guyana, Belize, Dominica, and Barbados are members of the court, right? All the Caribbean countries are members of the court at the original jurisdiction. At the appellate jurisdiction, it's only Guyana, Barbados, Dominica, and Belize. I think I got them there. Guyana, Barbados, Dominica, Belize. So the four of them, the court, the CCJ, is the court of final jurisdiction. For all of the other countries, the CCJ was only the court of original jurisdiction. So the question is why the other countries have not put the CCJ as their court of final jurisdiction? Well, again, it's the insularity, because most of the other countries are arguing that the CCJ will be controlled by politicians, and they rather stay with the Privy Council, which is the Court of Appeal in England, and that was our Court of Appeal when we were colonies. The other Caribbean countries, CARICOM countries, have stayed with the CCJ, well, not Haiti and Suriname, but the English-speaking Caribbean, CARICOM countries. They stayed with the Privy Council because they argue that the CCJ will be controlled by politicians. I guess members of your audience may be smiling and chuckling because they will say that we in Guyana, who joined the court, have now found out that the court can rule politically. People in Guyana are arguing that. Imagine. In Grenada, Antigua, and St. Vincent, they've had referendums asking the population whether they should join the CCJ as the court of final jurisdiction. The referendums, they were all defeated. The people said no, they don't want to carry their country into CCJ. Jamaica, I think they can go in with a simple majority. That's my sense, yes. The People's National Party wants to take Jamaica into the CCJ, but the Jamaica Labour Party, which has always been opposed to regional integration from the Federation come right down, they are fighting against it, you know? So I give that long, the panel being a teacher, I think it's good information. I give that long introduction and history of CARICOM in order to say that CARICOM is a necessary institution. As small countries in CARICOM making up just about 15 million people, we're a dot in the global economy. And there are things that we cannot do on our own. When you take a place like St. Kitts, which has 30,000 people, you know, Nevis, 10,000 people. You know, that's a country in a lot of the big countries in the world, that's a neighborhood. And it is very difficult as small countries for us to compete in a global economy. So it makes sense for us to come together. We have something called the regional negotiating machinery, in which when we are going to negotiate with the EU and the World Bank and so on, we're negotiating as CARICOM, not as Guyana and Barbados and St. Vincent and so on. And when you were sitting across a table from the IMF and the World Bank, and they're coming with 40 exports on the matter that you are dealing with. And if you're a Guyana, you go on there with 1 or 2 exports, in Kitts, you go on there with 1 export, you are no match. And so the regional negotiating machinery is important, and it has done good work. We have had in terms of disasters, hurricane, etc. We have a regional body that looks after that, because that's an enormous task, enormous undertaking. And so we've been able to look. We have the Caribbean Development Bank, which see about lending money and so forth. Of course, we have the University of the West Indies and the cricket team, which are the 2 longest running institutions of regional integration. So regional integration is really important for small countries. There's no doubt about it. We have really lacked the will, the level of leadership to make the necessary adjustments in order to make the CARICOM work more effectively. Our leaders still are reluctant to give up power in order for the institution to work. And so, you know, almost 50 years after the Treaty of Chaguaramas, we've made great strides. There is more that can be done, but like I said, it takes the will of the people to make it work. We in Guyana, of course, have now developed our own problems with the regional integration movement. You know, the rest of the Caribbean used to look up to us because we were said to be the least insular of Caribbean countries. The least insular. We weren't anti-Caribbean people come here. In fact, the older people would remember Barbadians coming here after emancipation, coming here as indentured laborers. And then later on in the 1940s, another slew of Barbadians came. So there are lots of Guyanese who are of Barbadian heritage, and they were welcome. You know, you call them Bajan and so on. Then you had migration from St. Lucia. A lot of St. Lucians come. You go to a place like Mahdia. Mahdia is little St. Lucia. Lots of St. Lucians, lots of Mahdians are now going back to St. Lucia to discover their relatives, because it was mainly men who came. the men would come, they come to look for gold. In those days, BG, British Guyana, was synonymous with gold, and they came and never went back. And they formed families here and so on. Lots of Vincentians came around the Linden area. We have a lot of Vincentians there. If we used to make fun as little boys, you can know where, in those days we call them islanders. You can know where the islanders live because always a bedfruit tree in the yard, right? You know, we in Buxton, for example, you had the Polydors. Their father was from one of the islands. They had a breadfruit tree, and of course we call them breadfruit. I remember Mr. Osborne, as he brave boy, he came from Grenada. Miss Mosam, not Mosam, Miss Live Friendship there. Moses, he was Jamaican. He came as part of the Salvation Army. So a lot of in those days we called them islanders. They came to Guyana and settled in our country. People also came from Suriname. We used to call them Dutchman. In our village there, those people at Milwaukee, you call them Dutchie, right? The Dutchies because their father came from Dutch Guyana. So Guyana was a place that accepted migrants. And you couldn't, as we know, you couldn't go into them other CARICOM country. They put you on bench and all kind of story, right? So when it came to Caribbean integration, Guyana was the leader. I mean, look at where the secretariat is in Guyana. Burnham very easily said, come set up the secretariat here. The first CARIFESTA was held in Guyana. So my colleagues always are amazed at the way in which Guyana is pro-CARICOM. Certainly, whenever there is an African Guyanese government, there have been criticisms of the Indian community. Professor Nettleford once remarked that the East Indian must become West Indian. The argument is that while Africans and even white Caribbean people have become West Indians, East Indians who came late, after emancipation, I mean, they came with their culture, they came with their religion, and so therefore they were not forced to integrate into the society as quickly as the others that have become creolized. And so there has been a sentiment in the larger Caribbean that the East Indian has not become fully West Indian as Africans. And so you see that reticent among the Indian populations in Trinidad and Guyana and maybe Suriname on the question of commitment to regional integration. So, Guyana, despite the PPP not being fully committed to CARICOM, Guyana has been an hospitable place. Understandably, once CARICOM aligned themselves with the regime changers in 2020, it was bound to affect Guyana CARICOM dynamics. So I think what we have in Guyana now is half the population. The half of the population that used to be very pro-CARICOM, meaning African Guyanese, are now less enthusiastic about CARICOM. Yeah, I think if you were to take a vote now on the CCJ, most African Guyanese will vote to leave the CCJ, which is a drastic step. And given the fact that in the Indian Guyanese population was never pro-CARICOM, and now you have African population that is has less confidence in CARICOM, I think Guyana is perhaps the country in CARICOM that has the least confidence in CARICOM now. Because it was the Africans who were enthusiastic about CARICOM. And given what happened in 2020, they have lost confidence, understandably. Indian Guyanese have never been enthusiastic about CARICOM. They give lip service, but when it comes to Haitians coming here, they will, keep the Haitians out. When it comes to a black Trinidadian prime minister being critical of the government, they will cuss him out. They're not, the PPP has never socialized its Indian Guyanese constituency to be pro-CARICOM. And so therefore, I think on this 48 years of CARICOM, Guyana is at its lowest ebb, lowest as far as confidence in CARICOM is concerned. And a lot of that has to do, as I said, with the 2020 election and CARICOM's own entanglement in that election.
Thank you for that. Let me take a commercial break here and remind you that if you're looking for quality home style flavors, you can check out Nasser's Home Style Flavors. They have a variety of peppers and seasonings and so on, ground seasoning, grind seasoning, and so on, green seasoning, as we like to say. So you can check them out. You can contact them on 626-3111. Right? Also, you can check out Chefs. The mobile is out again today. It is at the Bakewell Road there, just in the vicinity of the Republic Bank. So you can go out there from about 9:30 to 10 and see what there is to offer. And remember also at the Buxton Market there is the EC Party Rental and Beverage Services, where you can get a 360-degree party service. Dr. Hinds, you mentioned so many things in that little, in response to that little thing which I asked you. And so it would seem that we would either have an extended program, or we are going to have to leave some of my original discourses for another program. But when important issues are raised, they must be addressed. And that is you've pointed to the PPP's non-interest, as I would call it, in CARICOM. And you've pointed to some extent to not to some extent, you've pointed to the efforts or the intention of Trinidad, Guyana, and Suriname forming an alternative organization to CARICOM under the PPP, JAGAN, whatever, that kind of relationship. This effort, does it speak to what we know as the Indian colonization scheme?
Not necessarily. They wanted to form that Indian regional thing in the 1990s, the latter part of the 1990s. And it was driven by the feeling among Indians that they're a minority in the Caribbean. They also feel that the West Indian does not include the Indian. That when we talk about West Indian, we're really talking about African. And there is some justification for that feeling. I remember there was an exchange in 1979 between Eric Williams and the Black Stallion. The Black Stallion sang his famous Calypso, the Caribbean Man. And he said, we come on the same ship from the same place, and we must form a common intention for we women and children. And Eric Williams pointed out that the Indians didn't come on the same ship with the African came on slave ships. And he said he accused Stalin of speaking about West Indian only in African terms. And I think Stalin replied to him saying, well, to some extent, he's saying the basis of the Caribbean, the basis upon which the Caribbean civilization is built is on the African experience, because it is the African experience of slavery that turned a place like Guyana, for example, from being wild coast under slavery, and it was African labor that turned it into this living place where human beings can live. And so Stalin was making the point that if you take away the experience of slavery, you wouldn't have the Caribbean we have today. So while he was not necessarily saying the Indians are not part of the Caribbean, he was making the case that it is the African experience of slavery that is the basis upon which the Caribbean civilization flows. So there is that argument about the Indian role in Caribbean society. Vivian Richards, great West Indian cricketer, perhaps our greatest batsman, certainly our greatest political cricketer, once said that the accomplishments of the West Indies cricket team between the 1970s and the 1990s, when we won against all comers in the world, he saw it as an African, he said it was an African achievement. I think it was more a slip of the tongue from Viv Richards, because I don't think Richards was denying the role of Indians in that triumph. I mean, that period, the Kalichurans, the Derek Murray was vice captain to Clive Lloyd and others. And before that, of course, Rohan Kanai, Joe Solomon, Ramadan, and so on. I don't think Richards believes that Indians have not played a role. But he was making a statement of fact that the majority of the cricketers who have built the Caribbean cricket tradition from the 50s, the overwhelming majority of cricketers are of African descent. And so he made that statement against that instinctive statement, against that backdrop. I think, and of course, like I mentioned, Rex Metaphor do also made the same argument. That it's the African experience that is at the center of our Caribbean instinct. And I think that's the argument they're making. They're not making an argument East Indians don't belong or East Indians have not contributed. They're making the argument that if you were to take away integration, indentureship, that somewhere or the other there will still be a Caribbean civilization. But that if you take away slavery, the Caribbean face changes more drastically than if you were to take away integration. I think that's the argument they're making. Nevertheless, there is, has always been and continues to be that discourse. Here in Guyana, the Ravi Devs have argued, for example, that the Rupert Rupnarines and Moses Bagwans in the WPA never speak up to Indians. But the Kwayanas and the Ogunse and the Andayes and the Clive Thomas and to some extent the Hinds, they have spoken up for Africans, even though they belong to a multiracial party. But the Indians in the WPA spoke up for Indians. The Rafidevs and them love to make that argument. And so the debate continues about the Indian role in Caribbean society. The fact is that Indians, like I said, Indian Guyanese came with their religion. They did not have to create a religion in the Western world. As the Haitians had to create voodoo, as we in Guyana had to create comfort, as the Trinidadians and other Eastern Caribbean had to create Shouter Baptists and Orisha and so on, and the Jamaicans had to create Pocomania. The Africans had to, in a sense, with their African base, but they had to create no new religions in the old world because the religions were taken away. The Indians didn't have to do that. They came here, they were allowed to practice their religion. And so therefore, if you were allowed to practice your religion, if in many respects you're allowed to practice your own, to speak your own language, there were, up until 20, 30 years ago, there were lots of Indians who spoke Hindi. I guess the younger population doesn't do much of that. But if you were allowed to speak your language, you're allowed to practice your religion, you are allowed to have your own Indian names. Yeah, Africans had to rediscover African names in the 1960s as a result of the Black Power movement. So if you are a group that came here with your culture and allowed to practice your culture. And you were talking about the Indian scheme, the Indian remigration scheme. That was an arrangement that guaranteed Indians some sense of self-determination. And so the more...
Stick up pen, sir.
Yeah.
I wasn't, point of correction, I did not say the remigration scheme. I said the recolonization scheme. Unless I call it by the wrong name. I'm talking about the intentions of that tri-state, Guyana, Suriname, Trinidad, to use the three states, three nations for Indian dominance in the Caribbean.
Oh, well, that's a different thing. I thought you were talking about there was just a scheme. There was just a scheme, you know.
And there's still a such scheme.
Yeah, there was such a scheme when the Indians first came after independence. Pioneer and his wife discuss it in their book Skies of Bondage. That's what you were referring to. But I wouldn't say Indian dominance. I want to be very careful. It was more to stave off what they saw as African dominance. Because as I was explaining just now, the Indians always saw the Caribbean as dominated, the larger Caribbean I'm talking about here, as dominated by Africans. And so they felt that in order to stave off that domination, they have to create their own integration movement. Now the problem when you go down that road is that you end up with the philosophy that the PPP certainly has in Guyana, which is the best way to prevent yourself from being dominated is to set out to dominate others. Now, I don't know that the Indian groups in the Indian parties in Trinidad have that philosophy. I know the Indian cultural groups, Sat Maharaj, for example, who was the leading spokesperson for the leading Indian cultural group for a long time. He was of that mind.
I will not class myself as in worthy of pushing my toe in your shoe. But I don't know, to say that you don't know that the Indian political parties of Trinidad, for example, are of that same mind. The last election campaign, which led to the Rowley victory, was as brutal and gruesome and similar to that of the PPP. Kamla referred to Rowley as a black man, etc., etc. They taunted them about monkeys and bananas. How then can we conclude that they're not perhaps of the same thinking and disposition?
Because they have not been as aggressive as the PPP in terms of policies of domination. You see, I don't want to attribute racial domination to people based on something they say here and there. For me, it is structural, the structural racism that we talk about. In Guyana, the PPP, probably because it has been in power longer, has been able to introduce policies that are aimed at racial domination. We know that for a fact. There are policies, there are practices of government that have led to Indian domination. We don't have the same thing in Trinidad. That is the point I'm making. That is why I'm being very careful. And there are people in the UNC who believe in Indian domination. I bet they are, right? Do Indians generally feel that African Guyanese are, well, not generally. Do some Indians in Trinidad believe that African Guyanese are inferior to them? I am sure, all right? However, I'm saying that the policies of domination are more entrenched in Guyana than they are in Trinidad. Maybe it has to do with the fact that Indian-led governments have not governed Trinidad as long as the Indian-led government in Guyana. The UNC under Pandey was in power, I think, for one term. Kamla was in power for one term. So, all but 10 years. Compare here to Guyana, where the PPP has been in power from 57 to 64, that's 7 years. 92 to 215, that's 23 years, that's 30. And now this one to be 31. And so they've had more scope to introduce structural domination in a way that the UNC has not been able to do in Trinidad. That's all I'm saying.
I appreciate it. I usually say, God bless the day Rowley won the election. We might have had the opportunity to see what Kamla was capable of. Like I said, this program is going where I didn't intend to take it this morning, but it is going, and it is going. In the old quest of dominance and control and so on, today marks 55 years of the Son Chapman tragedy. Do you remember that? I was just reminded.
Yeah, I was a child. And my auntie used to take fruits and vegetables up to Wisma, in those days as it was called, to sell. And she just happened not to be traveling at that time. Because of the disturbance, she wasn't traveling. She had eased up traveling, but she easily could have been on the Son Chapman because she traveled with the Son Chapman. In those days, there were two launches, Son Chapman and a rich car. We as Delba used to say, a rich car. As you grow older, it was RH car. Those were the two launches. And so I give that personal anecdote to say that tragedy could have been a tragedy in my own family because my aunt would travel with those launches. I myself, as a child, spent, I think, one term because she took me up to Linden. We used to live at Gateway Alley. I usually have asked Lindeners, what is that now? The coldest water I ever bathed with in my whole life. Cold in America water during winter, American Canada water. Right? But yes, that was a tragedy. And a great tragedy, not just for Linden, but for Guyana, for African Guyanese. Because as I like to point out, Linden is really an amalgamation of people from the villages on the East Coast and the West Bobbies, mainly. But I suppose there were people there from the Quarantine and the West Coast. But mainly, Linden is made up of families from East Coast, Demerara, and West Coast Bobbies, who went there to work in the site industry. And so when a tragedy like that hit, it was not just Lindeners. It was people from who had their roots in the villages on the East Coast and West Bobbies. It's a tremendous tragedy. And this is the problem with Guyana. You hear Indians affirm the narrative of ethnic cleansing, which occurred as a reaction to the bombings on Chapman. And then, there was the reaction. Indians were beaten and so on, and expelled from Linden. But they speak about that. Indian historians speak about the expulsion of Indians and don't link it to Son Chapman. And that is the dishonesty of our ethnic historians. They speak of one factor in isolation from other ethnic factors in ethnic wars and ethnic conflict. There are always 2 or 3 actors. It's not one actor, but that's the problem with us in Guyana. I was on a conference a week or 2 ago, and one presenter on what he calls the Wisma Massacre. I changed the title of his paper from Wisma Massacre to Ethnic Cleansing in Wisma. Because he himself had to admit, after people maybe got down on him, that it wasn't a massacre. was not a massacre. This is an Indianist who had to change in the face of people protesting. So how can you say it was a massacre? It was not. You know, it was an ethnic clash in which you had people of one ethnicity who perished after bombs were placed on that commercial boat and killed people. And there was a reaction by their community people. So one cannot speak about Son Chapman as something by itself. You have to speak about Son Chapman and the Wismont disturbances. And you can't talk about the Wismont disturbances by itself without talking about Son Chapman. You see, at some point we have to begin to talk about our history in really fair terms. In the same way, you cannot talk about the Mingo factor in 2020 without talking about the recount factor. And if you listen to PPP and the Indian Guyanese, they talk about Mingo. They do not talk about the recount. And the recount show to the world more than Mingo showed to the world. They say Mingo had a spreadsheet and he was cheating on the spreadsheet. Well, the recount show more than spreadsheet. The recount got 48 boxes with no sheet. Come short, and the police confirmed that there were people who voted for the people who weren't in the country. That's all you're hearing about is Mingo. Why don't they go and charge those people who were in charge of those 48 boxes? I had no statutory document. They're charging Mingo. And it is what gets people like me crazy. Because I'm saying black people behave bad, Indian people behave bad, yet you paint black people as devils and Indian people as saints. And you expect me now to come out and back you with that. How can I back you declaring your own people as saints and my people as devils? I am not saying that black people don't misbehave. We misbehave. Indians misbehave too. I have no doubt that black people push their hand in boxes and fix votes at elections. I equally have no doubt that Indian people do the same thing. I have no doubt in my mind. And what the recount show is that that thing is probably more prevalent in Indian areas than black areas. That's what the recount show, and that is why they want to duck that recount. They don't want it to see the light of day in court because it will indict a lot of people who have gotten away by calling other people riggers. I would like to see who was in charge of the polling station in those 48, where those 48 boxes were. I would like to see their ethnicity and their political affiliation. Because black people are unfairly called riggers, while other ethnic groups get off as saints. And it is the way in which we present history. Every time I write something saying that there are two narratives to the 2020 election, Stabrook News don't carry it, Hydro News don't carry it. But I didn't expect the other to carry it. Meaning Chronicle and Guyana Times. But you expect at least Stabrook News and Hydro News, which are supposedly private, independent papers to carry. They do not want to hear anything about the recount. Do not want to. In the same way, you have one side which is going to talk about Wismont and the blowing up of the launch, and the other side is going to talk about the beating of Indians and expelling them from Linden. Both happened. One happened as a result of other. And even as a black person, I am not saying one was justified and one was unjustified. In ethnic conflict, you have to recognize that there are no guilty races, as Guyana said. It's conflict. And both sides have been aggressors at a certain point. One has been an aggressor at one point. The other one has been an aggressor at another point. If you look at the 61 to 64 conflict, 1961, Indian Guyanese were the aggressors. It was black people on the west coast of west coast of Demerara, who were being assaulted and killed by Indians in 61. Mr. Ross was the first person in Rose Hall, was the first person to be killed in the conflict of 1964. 1961 to 64. So Indians were the aggressors in 61. Africans were the aggressors in 62 and 63. When the theater moved to Georgetown, the aggressors were Africans in 62 and 63. And in 64, Indians were the aggressors. When they learned that the electoral system had changed and that it was now going to be PR and not first past the post which guaranteed the PPP to win, Dr. Jagan and the PPP said they're not accepting it, and Indians went on the rampage. So you look at that conflict 61 to 64, and you see for 2 years, Indians were the aggressors, and for 2 years, Africans were the aggressors. And that is why Guyana came to the conclusion that there is no guilty race. That both races have, throughout our history, been aggressors at one time or the other. But when you are telling the world and socializing your young people to believe the aggressors are only Africans, those young people have a right. Well, they don't have a right, but you understand if those young people look at black men and now black women, look at us as savages. Because if we are the ones who are always beating up people and killing people, then the young people will believe we are savages and we are only good for one or two things that savages do. You see? And that's the implication of one-sided historical narratives.
So tell me, I don't know if you are, well, you're a historian, so you ought to know. 43 persons died on that launch. How many Indians died as a result of them being put out of labor?
Not 43. Not 43. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's not 43. I don't want to put it down just to numbers, because numbers died, of course, tell you, numbers of people dead, of course, tell you about the enormity of the incident. But I want to see it in holistic terms. In holistic terms. You see, I don't want to get into the business of saying one side suffered more than the other side. There are places where Africans suffered more than Indians during that conflict. And there are places where Indians suffered more than blacks, right? And I think it's very dangerous propaganda to, in a situation of mutual conflict, to reach for the one that suffered most. Now, we Africans have our own narrative of suffering. Slavery is a clear narrative of suffering. Millions of our people perished, dislocated from their own land to their own country. That's a clear case. That's a clear case of lopsided suffering. I wouldn't come to an Indian-African conflict in Guyana and talk about who suffered more than others. I think that's a very dangerous path to go down.
All right, let me take a spin here and read a statement that came from Rahim Sharma Solomon on the conflict, and I then want us to talk about something which I saw advertised, and that was directed at the residents of Region 10. Come and take the COVID-19 vaccine. We'll give you a box of food. We'll talk about that when I return. So here, remembering the son Chapman. Today, 55 years have passed since that fateful day when more than 40 of Linden's own were massacred on the Demerara River as they traveled home on the Son Chapman launch at 1600 hours on Monday, July 6, 1964. It has been said that, quote, to live in hearts we leave behind is not to die, end quote. How very true. The men, women, and children who died on the Son Chapman 55 years ago live on in the hearts and minds of their families and friends and the people of Linden. Many of us alive today never knew the men, women, and children of the Son Chapman massacre. Yet we remember them and reflect on their experience because by their deaths, we have an example of what hatred and brutality can lead to: senseless loss of life and endless suffering. Incidents such as the Son Chapman massacre and the July 18th tragedy of 2012 must never again occur. We must take the lessons taught by tragedies such as these to guide our actions in the here and now. For our society to allow such tragedies to reoccur would be indicative of our collective unwillingness to learn and grow as a society. The survivors of the Son Chapman, 6 crewmen and 26 passengers, must also be remembered, for they represent God's never-ending mercy and the resilience of the people of Linden. This experience has made us stronger. The people of this region are known for staring adversity in the face and have overcome. May God rest the souls of the men, women, and children of the Son Chapman, and may God bless the people of Linden in Region 10. Sharma Solomon. That's a statement he issued in memory, in remembrance of this day. Now, over the weekend I saw, in the whole, I guess, interest of vaccinating people and so on, the Ministry of Health advertising that if Region 10 residents should turn up for the vaccines, they will get a box of food. How insulting is that?
Well, Kiraki, that's the point. Listen, sometimes we in Guyana are our worst enemy. There are black people who, in the face of racial onslaught, will tell you race is not important. I'm sure there are some in the audience who are probably cussing me this morning for talking about race. Race is not important. Indian Guyanese like to tell black people that also. Race is not important. White people like to tell black people race is not important. And like I said, some of us black people went in like that nonsense, like to repeat that nonsense. Now, once you establish that race is not quote unquote important, then you're able to do things which will not be called out for their racial intent and content. So you take a statement like you just recounted there. Come and get your vaccine and you'll get a box of food. Now, in a normal society that is not driven by race, that is a very innocent statement. But in a Guyana that is driven by race, racial stereotypes are very much part of the culture. And the whole notion that black people are hungry belly black man, if you are not aware of that aspect of the racial dynamics, if you're not aware of that racial stereotype, you will say, well, here's an innocent statement of wrong. What wrong if somebody said they give a box of food if you take the vaccine? But if you understand the race, if you understand racial stereotypes and their role in shaping our racial relations, our social relations, you will readily recognize the racial intent of that formulation you just read there. Do I know that somebody in the PPP deliberately coined that slogan? I don't know. Do I know that people in the PPP are aware of the racial weight of that statement? Yes. Do I care at this point whether they deliberately or innocently coin that slogan? At this point, I don't care. It is a racial slogan. I'm trying to make that point because I'm saying our society needs to become racially literate. One may ask, why do you want them to be racially literate? You want them to be racially literate so that they can recognize racial statements and formulations like the one you just read. Some may argue, well, when they recognize what they will do, will they go and fight up and beat up? I don't think rational people operate like that. So I would like to think that when they become racially literate, they become more sensitive to race and racism, and will be less prone to engage in what we call unconscious racism. A lot of racism is unconscious. That is, people engage in racial language, in racial practices, because they think it's normal, because you grew up in a community in the area in the town where black man like food, so you just take it as normal. You don't think it's racist, you think it's normal. You want a black man thing, come by a little food, right? But if you're racially literate, like some of us are, you'll recognize whether they intend that statement to have a racial effect. The fact of the matter, it will have a racial effect, because we're discussing it here this morning. I suppose people are discussing it in other places, right? So, yes, we are in the face of mounting Indian racism against Africans. He made the point, the Quiana thesis, at different points in our history, the two groups have behaved badly. And I think as a result of what happened in 2020, that election, there is no license in the Indian community to, as the young people will say, diss their African brothers and sisters. They have power, or so they feel. They feel the other side is powerless. They feel the other side are riggers, they're savages. And so you are going to get from the Indian community that kind of rhetoric.
There's also, I'm going to places I didn't intend to go. There's a similar, there's an ad from GPL, sorry. With an Afro-Guyanese thinking what our to-do list is. My hair, my nails, go shopping, and then there's the addendum, if I can call it that. But wait, I ain't paid GPL yet. So again, black imagery. You're thinking about doing your hair, you're thinking about doing your nails, you're thinking about going shopping, but you ain't pay your utilities. Right? A lot of these subliminal messages. But let's leave that for now. Let's talk about that letter which the chairman of the Police Service Commission has sent to Hoppy. The letter dated yesterday reads, Dear Commissioner Acting Hoppy, Ghana Police Force Official Promotions List, transmitted June 28, 2021. That's the headline. Reference. The Police Service Commission sent you a list on June 28, 2021 of ranks of the Ghana Police Force who were promoted. Your office acknowledged receiving the promotion list on June 30th. As you are aware, you are required to cause a special promotion order to be prepared so that the promoted ranks and other members of the force can be informed of the promotions. The quartermaster also uses a special promotion order to issue badges of ranks to the newly promoted ranks. The lawyer to the Police Service Commission, Mr. Selwyn Peters, copied you on a letter which was sent to President Mohamed Irfan Ali, informing him that his purported suspension of the Police Service Commission was unconstitutional and of no legal effect. You also informed the President that the Police Service Commission will continue to do its work until the end of its term in August 2021. Your action in not ensuring that the special promotion order is prepared and published 1 week after receiving the promotion list from the Police Service Commission is interpreted by the Police Commission as you defying the legitimate action of the Police Service Commission in promoting ranks of the Guyana Police Force. This letter is to inform you that the Police Service Commission expects you to cause the special promotions order to be published forthwith, and that you give instructions to the quartermaster to issue the newly promoted ranks with their badges of rank. The Police Service Commission would also like to remind you that as the most senior rank in the Guyana Police Force, you are expected to lead by example and to carry out all legal instruction or directives and to disregard unlawful instructions and or directives. This principle is considered one of the hallmarks of good leadership. Should you further delay to give effect to the promotions of the Police Service Commission, effect to the promotions, the Police Service Commission will be forced to take legal steps to command you to carry out your duties in relation to the promotions. We look forward to your response, and in any event, by no later than 12 p.m. on July 6th, 2021. So 12 o'clock today is what is described as high noon for Acting Police Commissioner Hoppy in this issue. You certainly have been following the drama. Where are you on it right now?
Well, let me give you the big picture and then I'll come down. The big picture is in post-2020 election, post-installation, post-regime change, you are going to get the kind of galloping authoritarianism that we've seen. So what we are in the presence of is the reinstallation of the hyper-authoritarian state and government in Guyana. So let's establish the big picture. As part of this, there is going to be certain interpretations of the law in absolute terms. And there is obviously on the part of the PPP, the interpretation of the powers of the president in absolute terms. They are interpreting the powers of the president as if he were an emperor or a king. And that is his declarations must take precedence over the Constitution. That is the PPP's stance on these matters. It therefore means that what you have, once the opposition and those who are victims of that hyper-authoritarianism decide to fight, you have the classic case of the state and government versus the society. The state and the government versus the society. Because what hyper-authoritarianism means, you have to declare war on your own society. In this case, at least half of the society. And once that half of the society decides to fight back, you have the classic case of that clash between state and government on the one hand and the society. And it is in that context, against that background, you're seeing this police thing playing out here. Clearly, the Police Service Commission is a constitutional body. It is protected by the Constitution. Its powers are protected constitutionally. It's a constitutional body. And another constitutional body, namely the president, the executive branch, is declaring war on another constitutional body. Classic case. And that other constitutional body has decided we will fight this. We will go to court and let the court make a determination on this matter. All right? And so we shall see. I don't think Happy is going to publish anything because the commander-in-chief, the reading is that the commander-in-chief is the sole repository of power, and that the commissioner is a creature of the commander-in-chief. And so I don't think the commissioner will act once you have that kind of reading of the law. And so there is going to be a showdown that will start in the courts. But if we are not careful, it could spill over from the courts to other areas in the society. And that is always the constant fear. I am not opposed to protest. I'm not opposed to resistance. I think it could come a time in the life of any nation when you are left with about two choices, submit or demand. Putting there from the immortal Nelson Mandela in his address to the court when he was being sentenced. So there comes a time he's justifying his actions against apartheid. There comes a time in the life of any nation when you're left with two choices, submit or demand. The time has come in South Africa for us to submit. As I'm quoting those words, I'm smiling because I was introduced to those words by Gail Teixeira when we were friends 40 odd years ago. Belonged to a drama group, a PPP drama group called Worker Stage. I left Buxton, myself, Sir McGarrell, and young Busty, who's, I think he's dead now. And we went to Georgetown and we said, you know, in the interest of ethnic unity, we come to join your drama group. They accepted us in the drama group. And we did this play on the Mandela trial. I played the role of Nelson Mandela. Yes, there was a time when I fancied myself as an actor. Yes, and I was part of one of the first film was in Guyana called Agro Seasman. And it told my Hollywood skills here this morning. I was part of Agro Seasman. That film was the first Guyanese film in 1972, I think it was. And so, yes, I remember those words well to this day because in the role of Nelson Mandela, I have to know those words. And I think we are fast approaching that moment in Guyana when we are left with but two choices, submit or demand. Some may argue, and I think I'm convinced that we are perhaps past that point. And so the Police Service Commission has decided it will not submit. It will demand that the president respects his sphere of power and allow the Police Service Commission its own sphere of operation and power. And so I think the movement to the court is a tremendous blow for resistance. And I hope it catches on in the rest of the society.
I hope it catches on in the rest of society. I would like to see some revelations, some of the other chairpersons of constitutional boards and so on. Let's find out what has been happening there.
Let me say in passing before you go on to your next thing. And I sometimes I know I offend supporters and so on. If I had my way, there would not be a new chairman of the Public Accounts Committee. I like young Jermaine. I spent, I think it was in 2019, I spent a few hours in his presence at Linden. It was 2019.
Yes, you were there together.
Yes, you were there with me. Right. And we spent hours talking. I think Aubrey Norton was there and some of the other brothers. And I rather like the young man. I think he has an inquiring mind. He's one of the young persons that has a future in Guyanese politics. So this is not about him. This is not about him. I would have, in the spirit of resistance, re-nominate David Patterson. Let them throw him out again. You want to fight? Let's fight. You want to rumble? Let's rumble. You see, I don't know what is the tactic of giving in, naming a new public accounts chairman. I don't know. I'm not in the people war room. But from the outside, I'm saying what you are signaling to your people is that you are willing to give in after the first round. You know, a boxing match is how many rounds now? In the MMA old days used to be 15 rounds. In the days of Ali and Foreman and so on, I don't follow boxing closely now. I suppose it's 10 or 12 rounds now. But you don't give in on the first round. Because the PPP is seeing that as a victory. And in a fight, you don't hand a victory to the other side so easily. They must earn the victory. And so therefore, I would not have given in and named the new chairman. I would have made this an arena of contestation. I just wanted to say that, but I disagree with the tactical move of the parliamentary opposition not to fight as the commission is doing. The Police Service Commission could have said, we have done our job, we have made the promotions, it's up to you all. You all can decide whether you're promoting the tops or you're not promoting the tops and the ladies. But they've not done that. They've decided you do not promote it, we gonna fight. And I wish, I was hoping that the parliamentary opposition would have made the Public Accounts Committee a fight, issue a fight. Unfortunately, they have not. They probably have better wisdom on this matter than I do. I have not discerned what it is. I would like to hear from them what was the reasoning. I sometimes, the news moves so fast, they may have explained their reasoning, I don't know. But I would not have taken that route.
You know, Dr. Hinds, all right, they say hindsight is 20/20 vision. Let's move on from that. But the opposition certainly has made this thing so easy for the illegitimate government, right? That Anil is throwing stones at them. Anil is making them a laughing stock. There's a video. Let me see if I can get it up for the viewers. With Anil, basically, I think while he was in his visit, while he was ducking from Rickford Burke. Here's the video.
I believe in constitutional governance. Constitutional governance requires a vibrant, effective, competent opposition. I want our government to face a strong and vigilant and competent opposition. Look what we have. Look what we have. These people can't even criticize us properly. Sometimes I want to call them on the phone and say, hey man, that is not what you should say. This is what you should say. They can't even criticize us properly. Sometimes you feel pity for these people. You feel really sorry for them. You must have opposition. But you want opposition that is effective, constructive, thank you, not destructive. And that is all we are asking. Imagine we have to ask the opposition to become constructive. We have to ask them to put a little more pressure on us. Be a little more competent. Put a little more pressure, you know. The president spoke about an adversarial system in the parliament, which is, that's how the thing is structured. But there is no opposition on the other side. It's like you're speaking to yourself. Middle of the parliament, you saw one of them lie down and sleep on the floor just like that. That is the kind of behavior, lewd and lawless and vulgar. We don't need that in our society. We need leaders who can represent our people's interest. That is what the people deserve.
Good advice, Manil?
Or
an insult to the intelligence of...
Iraqi. I grew up in a village, and I understand Anil from the village next door. You know, we used to say, little by bicycle and get brakes. Little by bicycle and get brakes. Look, you get that man, you know, taunting you. Of course, if he gets real, what he's calling opposition, they will run for cover or they will send the police for real opposition. So he's been disingenuous. But the point is that he feels confident enough to taunt the opposition for not standing up to them. And it's a minor tragedy. I know the PNC. I belong to a party that fight the PNC toe to toe. And I know the PNC itself. The PNC, I know there is no political leader could have spoken to the PNC under Burnham or under Hoyt or under Corbyn in that way. I say that without fear of contradiction. Adil Nandalal or no PPP leader could have spoken to a PNC under Burnham, Desmond Hoyt, and Robert Corbyn in that manner. It's an insult to the party. It's an insult to the supporters of the party to have Nandlal, who is a little by in politics, talking to a big established party like that. You're losing your marbles when a little by talking to you like that. And I can't help but take a dig of some of the coalition supporters who just be on this program. And you see, you understand people like me, you're walking your mouth, talking up your mouth, David, you're always criticizing the coalition. Look, you all don't do. Look, that is what should. I'm not a PNC, but I believe a strong PNC is important for the ethnic equilibrium in Guyana. Because there's the old adage that if you want peace, you must have what you call a kind of equilibrium. They know none of the group gets so strong that it can unilaterally run things and take advantage on the other group. So you have a balance. During the time of the Cold War, the Americans went to the moon, or the Russians went to the moon, the Americans go to the moon. The Russians develop a weapon, the Americans develop a weapon, and vice versa. So you keep the equilibrium of what they call in those days atom. And in order to get ethnic peace in ethnically divided societies like ours, one of the ways you do that is that both groups should have approximate strength. But when the party of one group is perceived to be so toothless, it may not be as toothless as Anil is saying it, but certainly Anil is putting that perception out there, that you're weak, you're toothless, you can't even criticize, you're incompetent. Well. It may not be as bad as Anil is saying it, but that is the perception, and that is what is going to drive the PPP to do the things they do. It is the perception that the other side is weak. It is the perception the other side is weak that drives that kind of hardline politics. I don't think Anil can talk to me like that. I don't have the power of the PNC. I belong to a little party, according to Mr. Granger, the party of doctors. You know, as though doctors is a bad thing. But anyhow, I don't think Anil Nandalal can talk to me like that. I dare him. Because if he talks to me like that, I will talk back to him. In a certain way. You see the lock up, what's your name? Annette? Is we they're really targeting? They understand the power of what we do on this platform. So the first ball the ball is to Annette. But is the rest of we they're targeting? They're trying to close down this resistance in the public cyberspace. Because this is resistance. I dare Anil to talk to you, Kilaki, to talk to Mark Bishop, to talk to Rickford, make mincemeat of him. He dare not talk to us like that. You see who he picked on? PNC leadership, pull your all pants up. Get up from off your knee for black people's sake. Because they perceive you all to be weak, they will perceive all of us to be weak.
So we need some opposition. We need some opposition leaders with gonads.
Look, we do have opposition leader with, gonads you call it. The PNC leaders get vexed when you said testicular fortitude, right? You get vexed with, we name Lincoln Lewis who use them words.
But you know, let me interject here a little bit. You know, Anil can speak like that because I understand the Mark Benchcap's program. Granger was saying that he is not in support of protest.
Well, I didn't hear it, so I don't want to comment. I don't want to comment when he didn't say it because I didn't hear it. Look. There are people in the opposition benches right there in Parliament who got fighting them and who are fighting. I'm not referring here to individuals. I'm referring here to the collective. Because individuals can fight, you know. What they will do is pick off those individuals. Pick off Annette, pick off this body, pick off the body. That's what oppressors do. But when they're faced with the collective might, that is all of the actors together as a collective, is a different story. It's a different story. Now, if the leader says that he's not in favor of protests, then if he had told me that, I would then ask him, well, then what you're in favor of? Right? I don't know if he was asked that question, so I don't want to comment on something that I didn't hear. But I just want to say there are individuals in the party, in the parliament, who are fighting in their own ways, who are willing to fight. But I think the problem is the collective effort. That is lacking.
Thank you, Dr. Hinds. It's now 8 hours 36. Let's open up the lines and hear what the viewers have to say. The lines are now open. 622-5933 is the number to call. Call and let's talk the thing. Because it's talk the thing time. Yeah, let me talk the thing. 8 hours 36, and we're going up to 9 o'clock, not a minute past. Not 1 minute past 9, okay? So let's understand that. Where are we? Where was I going? I know where I was going, you know. I know right where I was going. Well, the lines are going already, so let me take the first call for the day. Caller, you live, good morning. Questions, not presentations, remember.
Yeah, good morning, Karaki and Dr. Hinds and all viewers. Dr. Hinds, I believe that CARICOM as it is it's good for tourism, culture, sports, etc. But I strongly believe in my mind that Guyana joining the CCJ is a regression of our country being a republic, which should be self-serving for and by its people. And my question is, did you ever do a research on what God did the Haitians pray to before they started that revolution? I knew a Jamaican, I can't remember his name, went over there and they kept this service and all of that before they started that revolution. Could you do some research on that if you had? Thank you.
Very good question on the Asian thing, you know. They did have that prayer. The thing about the Haitians, the voodoo God is really a multifaceted God. Because really voodoo is, or voodoo as it is known, as it is properly, should be properly known, it's really a bringing together of the different gods, the different religions that the Africans brought with them across the Atlantic. And they fused all of that into one religion, and then they later fused it with Catholicism into voodoo. I will have to go and look to see whether it was the Orisha god, because a lot of the Africans in Haiti came from that area that is now the Gold Coast and Nigeria and so on. But there were lots of them from Mali, what is today Mali, what is today Ghana, Nigeria, and so forth. And I'm not sure whether it was the new voodoo god or one of the gods they brought with them from Africa that they prayed to. So I will have to do some research on that. They did have a prayer. They prayed to their God. They got the remember their gods are African gods are ancestral gods, and they got the permission for the revolution from their ancestral gods, and they went on from 1791 to 1804 to wage that revolution, and they triumphed, beating the most powerful European army of the day. But I will have to check to see which god they prayed to, whether it was the voodoo god or one of the gods that they brought with them from Africa. On the question of CARICOM, although I differ with you in terms of the importance of CARICOM, I respect as a Guyanese that your confidence has been shaken in CARICOM. I respect that, and I will not argue against it, even though I still think that CARICOM is necessary for all of us in the Caribbean region.
Caller, you live. Good morning.
Good morning to you, sir, and good morning to my brother, Dr. David Hinds.
Good morning.
My contribution to the program on the discussion, I believe we are kind of dead ass, because I think for the past couple of months now, there's been an outcry and a complaint from I would say the people at the bottom, or the grassroots people, or mainly supporters of the coalition, and mainly African people, or about what is happening in Ghana. And all they've been crying out for is...
I differ with you in terms of the importance of CARICOM. I respect...
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, some sort of representation to the onslaught that we are seeing from the PPP. Right? And it is getting worse and worse every single month. Every month, they're becoming bolder and bolder. And for the simple reason, we're not seeing no strong opposition, no strong representation.
I differ with you in terms...
I think we've reached a stage now where we're sucking at their hearts. And as if you see some people are beginning to pull away from the PNC, There's people who are in the party, but there are people on the ground, supporters, voters who are pulling away day by day from the PNC. And I believe if nothing is being done, I think the PP within this year or sometime next year will be in what we will call total domination. And we will just have to live with it, total domination, because the PNC and its leadership and its members, I don't think they care anymore, because I believe they have been hearing and they have listened to what people have been saying, but there's something called opportunists, and there's a term which says that African people, you give them certain benefits, put them in a chair in some office or give them some sort of perks, and they become blind. And I think and I believe this is what happened with the current opposition in Parliament, and as well as the leadership. The latest move is what by the PNC or by the opposition tells you what we're heading. You are the situation where the PVP fight to get rid of Mr. Patterson from the chairmanship of the Public Accounts Committee. And everybody was wanting to see what would be the PNC reaction to this. What would have been their opposition? And lo and behold, they just bowed down and put Mr. Figueroa out to chair the committee. We wasting time supporting these people. We wasting time. So we have Mr. So is showing the PNC and the opposition how to fight these people. Mr. So, one single man is showing you how to fight these people. Right? You had a situation with the family, the old Henry family, people who were injustice was done to. People slain. A whole can become outcry and now look what happening. They arrest the entire family, and the PNC and the opposition not even one day, one night come out and support these people. You have one liar like Nigeria use and other people fighting these people battle. And the opposition is nowhere to be seen. Focusing on all these people. So we're in a crisis, and if no new leader rise up to represent the black people, the people will be in total domination for some time to come.
Thank you, Carla.
Right.
Yes, Dr. Hinds, you wanted to say anything in relation to that?
Yeah, you hear the agony and frustration in that brother's voice, and I recognize his voice, and I know he's not a pushover, and the agony, the pain, and he is making very important points, and sometimes you have to think. I get the sense that some people in the leadership of the party are thinking about the preservation of their party and the preservation of their own leadership positions. The brother talk about privileges and so on in the party, which are important. I think ensuring that the party is kept alive is important. But in a time when your people are being exposed to blows, you can't just think about the party. You have to think about those human beings, 200 and something of them, who put their exes along with their families. You have to think about what they are going through also. This can't be just about your party and your party congress and who's going to be chairman and which faction. Those things are important, don't get me wrong. But I'm saying that you also have to, in spite of what's going on internally, fight to protect those people. And I think that's the call is making it.
Good afternoon, Dr. Hinds.
Good morning.
Morning, sister.
Everything. Now with CARICOM, I feel that Guyana, when you listen to the different things that Dr. Hinds said, Guyana doesn't have a place in CARICOM. Because to my mind, CARICOM never really did good for us since the death of Burnham. I remember when people used to be going to Barbados and what used to happen to them as a CARICOM state. Barbados forget we prop them up and I think certain other islands in the Caribbean Sea with our knowledge as palm boilers when our men used to leave their families and go and work in those countries with sugar and teach them how to boil palm because they didn't know how to boil the sugar. That is one. When this election passed, CARICOM never stood up as a faction to say, let us see what is rightfully thing in this election be adjudicated to the person who have won the election. Then this Haitian business. Then we had the problem with the vaccines. Coming to the vaccines, Guyana bought vaccines from India, the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. And yesterday I was going through my palm, tap my phone, when CNN put up something on India. You got more knowledge of the computer, you must check it out, where they said that the vaccines that India made were no good. Hence, it caused so many deaths in India. Now the Indian Dr. Hinds spoke about the Indians here, they had their thing. Yes, the Indians came to Guyana as indentured to work for 5 years and to return back to the slums of India. So hence, why take away your culture when you're only spending 5 years with us? You will be going back. So they didn't need to take away the culture. But we, as black people, we came here with no thought of ever going back to Africa. Hence, our culture was taken away. Then what they did, they put different factions of black people together. You may be Congo, you may be Yoruba, and mix up the cultures, mix up the dialect. So you were not able to communicate to your black brothers. The only thing you communicated with was the drums, because we didn't understand the drums. Now, I had an attack from an Indian person. I said something, and he told me that, oh, y'all came at the belly of the ship, shackled. Now look at Rickford Burke. You talk about black people. There is one black man who confused the whole area in America. One civilized, as they would say, and we were civilized when we came here because we were master builders. And I'm quite certain the first set of slaves who those white people put on board those boats must capsize them boat, beat them up and capsize them boat. So when they realize that we bringing these people out as ordinary people, and look what they do, hence the need was to strap them down in chains at the bottom so that they cannot come up and overthrow the boat. The Indians came here, yes, they came sitting because they realized when they went into the slum areas, they came willingly. So they did not have to strap them down because they weren't coming here against their will. Anyway, moving along. This man attacked me and he told me, I said, he read it in the history book. I said, but you didn't read in the history book. They pick y'all out of the slum area and y'all work all the bongo coolies. He shift aside. Then he come back, he said, he went to America, and in America, they ain't got coolie and black. All of you are want to say, oh, you have to go tilt to America to realize that the only two races those people look after, if you're in black, you're white. And when we go down the road, the PAPNU has got to stand up. The last time I said, oh, I was ill and a lot of things. They have got to stand up. Look what Brickford Burke did in America. And should APNU take a page from Rickford book, one of them supporters out there, it would be a different ball game. And when all the things, I am totally against CARICOM. CARICOM has never ever done anything really for us. And you know they got the feeling when people see how you shining, they just envy you. And that is the same thing with CARICOM. Guyana was once called the bread basket of the West Indies. We are not West Indies. The water will wash us is the Atlantic water. We aren't in the Caribbean Sea. But Barnum thought it right, seeing we were the only English-speaking country in South America. You got English-speaking country along the Levy join up and group together. But they never really accepted us. Because when the talk, I could remember coming up just now, we went on a boat cruise, and we had 3 Bajan men in the boat. And when they passed at the back of leg one, and they looked to the front, they said, "Oh God, this bigger than Barbados by far." So they envy us for a lot of things. We as Guyanese, we have got to take our stand and come out of it, and we have got to remove from the lowest standard. And the thing about the food in Linden, the people should not accept the food in lieu of the vaccine, because a woman from the East Coast claimed that they gave her 2 types of vaccine. The vaccines are A and B. Do we know if they gave her 2A parts of the vaccines, different mix, or 2B part of 2 different vaccines? We have got to go down the road with these vaccines, because this vaccine, 2 persons I know close to my village have died after accepting the vaccine. One died on Saturday, a big man, and one died yesterday morning. That is my point this morning. Bye-bye.
Thank you. A presentation you made here this morning, but you get off.
Well, you know, man, you give him presentation. Sorry.
Yes. All right. The lines remain open, 6225933. You got about 6 minutes left. Y'all blame Rhonda, right? Not me. Dr. Hinds, anything to say there?
Yes, I'm here. As usual, Rhonda is on the ball, and, you know, she expresses herself fearlessly. Even if you disagree with her, you know that when she speaks, it comes from deep within or deep from her belly, you know, and that is, I think, what we need.
Colin Live, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Kadaki. Good morning, Dr. Hinds.
Good morning.
Good morning, brother.
Good morning, everyone in the diaspora. Dr. Hinds and Mr. Kadaki, I want to put forward something very quickly. On the election issue, I think there is a way which we definitely can get the interest of the CCJ on this election issue based upon what was mentioned by the Chief Justice there, President of the Court, on the subject of new electoral regime. Now let me get to it. Voter registration as it pertains in Guyana from 2018 or before, when voter registration occurs, there is a contractual agreement between voters and GCOM. Voters go to GCOM to register with GCOM to vote. In that registration process, GCOM is a body that is governed by certain laws. One of those laws is called the Representation of the People's Act. GCOM of itself doesn't have any laws other than internal rules and regulation. But GCOM is a gateway. GCOM is used as a go-between the state and the people. Election is about a very simple matter. People casting their votes to decide who will govern us and by what means, system we will be governed by. So when we go to register, we are registering in agreement with ROPA in all the different specifics of ROPA. Then, now, ROPA is the system by which Mingo had to use, Lowenfield had to use, Claudette Singh had to use. Everything is governed by ROPA. Now, after the votes were tallied up, Granger and Mia Motley and Claudette Singh mainly it rests upon Claudette Singh because she is responsible and accountable for GCOM. Claudette Singh changed from Roper over to Order 60. It may not be totally, but it was sufficient enough to breach the agreement under which all of us registered for. We registered with the expectation, the constitutional expectation that our votes will be governed, calculated, ascertained, and determined on the ROPA. Never did we have, when we registered on registration day, never did we have the expectation or the foreseeability that a new electoral regime would be brought to bear upon the tallying, upon the governing of the votes. When ROPA was set aside or amended and Order 60 came in, we as the voters never signed up for that. You see, election is all about one simple thing: casting the votes. Let's not get lost with all the fancy stuff at the top, Claudette Singh and the courts and all of that. It's about me casting my vote in a democratic process. Do I give my consent? What am I consenting to? I consented for my votes to be governed and calculated under ROPA, not Order 60. So this is a breach of contractual agreement between the voters and GCOM. GCOM breached, violated that. We had a constitutional expectancy to expect our votes to be calculated under ROPA, not Order 60. So that's the main premise. Hence, when it was said in the CCJ that nothing was mentioned about the constitutionality, I think Justice Austin had alluded to the point that, do you know, by the way, this is a new electoral regime. Now, the question I want to ask, a new electoral regime is pertaining to whom? It's not pertaining to Roxanne George, or to Granger, or to Jack Deal. A new electoral regime pertains to them partially, but wholeheartedly a new electoral regime pertains to the voters. We are the one who needs to know that this is an electoral regime. Electoral regime is only pertaining to a person casting a vote. Fundamentally, it's about the stockholders, the shareholders, the person of interest.
Caller, let me stop you at 9 o'clock. And I'm stopping you because I think I got the crux of your presentation as you saying that there's been a breach of the... Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you.
Yes, I stopped you because I think I heard you say that the meat of the matter here is that there's been a breach of a contractual arrangement between GCOM and the voter. Am I right?
Yes, correct.
Good. So that is where I will have to stop you because it's 9 o'clock now. We can continue this discourse.
Okay.
We can also, you perhaps can send us something in writing, you know how to get to us. And so Dr. Hinds will have a more in-depth look at it moving forward. Dr.
I have
Hinds,
sent it to you, Kadakis.
Pardon?
I sent it to you. I did already.
Thank
twice.
you. Dr. Hinds.
Okay.
Yes, Kanaki?
Yes. I'm asking you to make closing remarks, any reference to what the caller said, the breach of contract, if I can call it that.
Generally, he's on to something there that needs broader discussion. He's correct. He's correct. An election is determined by the reports of the returning officers from the regions and not by a recount. That is a central point. And the court is once the petitions are heard, the court we'll have to address that matter. But I can deal with it next week, first thing when we come on.
Okay, sure.
Join me tonight on Politics 101. We are looking at Guyana CARICOM dynamics. I have a team tonight. Raymond Gaskin will be on for the first time on Politics 101. Young Ronald Austin Jr. will be on. Lincoln Lewis will be on, and Amanza Desir. We are going to be discussing the Guyana CARICOM dynamics in the wake of the 2020 election. So join me this evening. And on Thursday, we will be dealing with ancestral lands. So those are our two topics for this.
Before he disappeared, this caller was trying to get you a long time. I don't know if there's a direct question which you might need to answer next week. Caller, your life.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Kadaki. Good morning, Dr. Hinds. You know,
Morning.
Today is the anniversary for the Sun Chat Month, and I'm thinking that should it be the reverse in which it was an Indian set of people, I think they would have built some monument or something for these people. And I'm saying this to say also that, you know, these people are so full of lies. It's like you got to know what you're about to actually follow the lies that they tell. Even to the end, more martyrs, my Papa, he used to be working with them, and he said the story that they tell about these and more people is nothing but not the truth. But yet still there and more martyrs, and we accept that. I mean, that's another discussion, but you know what? I'm saying that we have to fight, and it would be a hard task because you know what? Guyana is fractured, and I don't ever think that we would get back to that place where we can live together. What has to happen? We have to learn to accept each other and, you know, do our thing as black people. And if they want to do whatever, just spend our money with the people who respect us. And you know what? We have to fight this. I am broken right now to see what is going on to black people. And it's like you're not seeing any relief in sight. But we have to fight. You gentlemen have a blessed day. God bless you and happy Tuesday to you. Bye.
Thank you. Nobody else. Don't call now. Have a great day. Good morning. All right. It's a pity, you know. Sometimes I'm willing to go longer with these programs, but there are other responsibilities which I have. Even as I'm here right now, there's somebody waiting to be attended to. So I have to go. Have a great day. See you tonight on Politics 101. And then join me tomorrow morning for another program of BUXTONIAN Morning Time. I think tomorrow I'm just going to open up the line so everybody gets to make their presentations. And therefore I'll call tomorrow Protest Wednesdays. Have a great day for you.